Hello BookTube. Before I start with my mid-month wrap-up, I was just about to say mid-term wrap-up, that would be nice. Before I start with my mid-month wrap-up, I need to extend a big welcome to all my new subscribers. Hi, nice to see you. I hope you're going to enjoy yourselves here. I also need to extend a very, very big and heartfelt thank you to Mel at Mel's Bookland Adventures for mentioning my channel, because Mel, you are solely responsible for this, and I don't think I have enough words to say thank you. You have superpowers. If you give up reading, advertising is for you. But thank you so much. I really do appreciate the shout out and the recommendation of my channel. Anyway, time is ticking. It's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. So before I wake up the household, let me just get on with the wrap up. So the first book I'm not going to really say anything about because I have a whole video about this one. And for those few who have not read Much Ado About Nothing, my thoughts and opinions are there. Enjoy. The next book was a bit of a holiday read. I have not finished it, but I have put a bit of a dent in Stalin by Robert Service. This is a biography on Stalin. It's a bit of a dent. Well, I suppose it's relative. If that was my car, it would be a huge dent. But anyway, I have not read any of this last week because it's been a hectic week. It's the first week back, new term. It's also the last term of the academic year. Life-changing decisions have been made. We've said goodbye to matrics. Exam papers have to be staked by next week, and I'm not reading much right now. This was my holiday reads, which will start revealing a rather large flaw. Anyway, I'll get to that. So the next book that I read in the holiday was Everything Is Illuminated by Jonathan Safran Foer. Now, in this story, we have a character by the name of Jonathan Safran Foer, déjà vu anyone, who wants to go and find a woman by the name of Augustine in a town called Trachimbrod. It's late. 90% sure it was the Ukraine. 90% sure it was the Ukraine. Anyway, he's American, so he needs to get a translator, and he finds a young guy by the name of Alex to be his translator. Now, Alex and his grandfather, who's the driver, drive him around to go and find what he's after. But the more interesting story is with Alex and his grandfather, and less so with Jonathan Safran Foer, the character. Now, in the beginning, because Alex is obviously not a home language English speaker, his speech is filled with malapropisms. And in the beginning, superficially, I thought it was humorous. A little bit later, I thought it was frustrating and mocking foreign language speakers, because English folks like to do that quite a bit. And later in the book, I was kind of wishing he'd come back and be as bad as he was, because it needed a bit of humor. It got really serious and really dark. So yeah, mixed feelings about that. I think that's my general thought on this book, is mixed feelings. As I said, I liked Alex's story, but Jonathan Safran Foer's story actually really irritated me. I can see why it was put in. This is more of a book about writing and the writing process, although not explicitly. And I could see what he was trying to do by exposing different narrator styles. We're going to get up to styles just now with this. But the different stories. I mean, Alex was a narrator that you could trust, where Jonathan Safran Foer's story was, yeah, I wasn't too keen on that. But I need to mention the styles when it comes to this, because this book is a mishmash of different things. It's very experimental. And some parts of it I thought was horribly unnecessary. I mean, there are sections that are written like a movie script, parts that are written as letters I could get. But the part that really, really was effective was when Alex's grandfather is telling his story at the end. And it's a dreadful story, it really is. And when things get really hard, all the words get mushed together, so it's one word. And I could actually picture a man sitting there trying to spit out these words so fast that it became one, so that he was getting it out quickly. He didn't want to have to slowly process it again. So that part worked for me. I thought that was very effective. But other parts I thought was very unnecessary. I mean, when you've got 2 pages of I'm writing or we are writing, I can't remember which one it was now. I mean, it's just repeated and repeated and repeated. And it's like, a tree died somewhere for that. Anyway, the next book I read was The Shock of the Fall by Nathan Filer. Now, this is a story about mental health. The narrator in the story lost his brother at a very young age, and he felt responsible for this. Now, I think this book would work very well for a younger audience than I am. I think it's an interesting introduction to mental health issues, but for me personally, I had a problem with this because the narrator and the boy with the mental health issues are the same person, right? So the narrator came across as being reliable, and when he's telling you how his character has a mental health issue, it didn't quite carry. Basically, let me give you an example. So let's say my late dad decides to pitch up. I'm not going to go, I see an image of my father. I would go, hey, Dad, you've returned, right? So I found that his narrative style made me not really buy into his mental health issue, because he was telling me it was the illusion, the vision, etc. I don't want to reveal what mental health issue he had, because I'm assuming that, as it's only revealed right at the end of the book, that it's a bit of a spoiler. But yeah, I think this book would have been improved with an unreliable narrator, because that disconnect made me not feel as much for him. I felt it was more sterile. Although there was a story, it's a small story, the story of the girl right in the beginning. It's the opening part where he's watching her bury her doll. That girl's story moved me. That one did. And I'm not going to say why, because I don't want to reveal anything, just in case you want to read the book. But yeah, that part touched me. The next book I read was Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. I've had this book on my shelf almost 20 years. I remember, I think it was Oprah who recommended this, and when I was young I was always looking for new books, and YouTube didn't even exist back then. I don't even think the internet really did. And if I got a recommendation of a book, I would grab it if it sounded interesting, because there's just so many books out there, and if you're judging by the cover, you're very often disappointed. Anyway, this book gives such a view of poverty. I have not experienced hunger like I have before through these pages. It was quite something to witness. This is Frank McCourt's biography of his life as a child growing up first in America and then in Ireland. It was during the Depression. There was no money at all whatsoever. It captures a lot of the feeling of Ireland, or at least I'm assuming it does. I felt like it did. And yeah, the themes in this, the view in this, sure. His father is an alcoholic, and here you've got this family who are starving. They are so hungry. When I say they are so hungry, they would eat the shells of the eggs if they were lucky enough to get an egg, because there must have been something good in there. I mean, can you imagine that? And here his father was an alcoholic, and when he would finally manage to get work, he would not come home that night. He would go to the pub. And I can't say he'd have a drink, because the connotation of a drink is having a civilized glass of wine. He would piss it up. He would drink everything. And then the next day he'd be too drunk to go to work, and he'd get fired, and the family was still starving. But what I loved with this is that it didn't go and point fingers. It didn't offer criticism bluntly of the father. In fact, you could see that the boy still loved his father. You can see that there were still good qualities in the father. And it left me to make my own opinion of this, which I really appreciated. Those are the kind of books that I like. The other institution that this book discusses is the church. And that was something as well. You know, oh, it's so difficult trying to talk about things like the church without offending. But here you've got these kids who are starving, and they get a shilling, and they'll go to the church to buy a candle to pray. And instead of buying food, and I just, wow, I felt that there was a lot of explaining that needed to be done for that. I mean, before you get mooned. And yeah, what I like with this is that it left me to make up my own opinion. It didn't tell me what to think. It was like watching a life in front of my eyes and judging it for myself. And I thought that was really effective. Yeah. So, as you can tell so far, my holiday reading was rather heavy. And I knew that I was coming up for quite the busy term. So I thought I'd pick up something light next because I really needed a break. So I got Lords and Ladies by Terry Pratchett down. This is another one of the witches books. I don't really have too much to say about this. I've never read a bad Terry Pratchett book, well, other than The Long Earth. I really didn't enjoy that. But yeah, this book has some interesting themes. Appearance versus reality. Oh, I should probably tell you. There was some new witches that have moved in, and, well, young witches, and they were up to some nonsense and have managed to do some trouble, and a guy was dead, and now other things, the elves are back. So yeah, that was fun. Magrat was brilliant in this. I liked the decisions that she had to make. I liked the touch of feminism in there. But other than that, I don't really have much more to say on that one. But it was still not quite as light as I wanted. So I finally picked up the only book that I have bought that is a 2017 release. And a part of me feels embarrassed to lift this up because, you know, almost 40 and stuff. But yeah. So I read Never Say Die by Anthony Horowitz, by Alex Rider. Wow. No, by Anthony Horowitz. And man, I loved this. It was exactly what I wanted. I had a holiday reading this. I'm so pleased that as a teacher, I have an excuse to pick up books like this and not feel guilty. So let me give you a bit of a background story to this. When I was studying to be a teacher, my postgrad, we had to put together a reading list of books that we would recommend for the kids to read. It was one of the projects that we needed to do. And our prof went and gave us a whole pile of books that we could help ourselves to and, you know, read and review, obviously return to him for, you know, this project. And I read about 4 or 5 of them, and they were dreadful. They would have put me off of reading. They were formulaic to a fault. They had more cliches than anything. In fact, I don't think it had an original expression in it anyway. It was just dreadful. So after 5 of them, I gave up, and I thought, bugger this, I'll go do it myself. And once upon a time, I went to a midnight book release in Charing Cross Road. No need to mention the book. It was a brilliant holiday. And yeah, over there at that book release, they gave us a package of freebie books for promotion. And the first book, well, one of the books was Stormbreaker by Alex Rider, by Anthony Horowitz. Oh, I don't know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. My IQ has dropped. Anyway, and I read that book on the Friday. The Saturday morning, I was waiting outside Bargain Books for them to open in Grahamstown so that I could buy the rest of them. It was exactly what I wanted. It was fast. It was, it moved. I lived in them. They were brilliant. But look, they're still far-fetched. Okay, they're still very far-fetched. But for 14-year-old boys, I have got quite a few boys reading on this series. And that's my excuse for having this one, because I've got a Kiddywinkle who read his first book last year and has since read the entire series. He's gone through Robert Muchamore's Cherub series. He's now starting on the Hunger Games, but he's wanting this one. So I thought I would give it a read first and make sure it was still good. And It really was. The Alex Rider series is kind of like a kiddie James Bond. Kiddie, not right the word, but a young James Bond series. It's MI6, there's gadgets, the girls have the funny names, like you have Sabina Pleasure, this one still. Other girls that they've had in the past were like Tomorrow Night. But yeah, it's fun, it's fast, but it's not something silly like Cody Banks. Alex Rider books are actually very dark. The very first book starts with Alex being told that his uncle has been killed, and he was already an orphan. His uncle was his legal guardian. He is a spy, but he is a spy who wants to be a schoolboy. He regrets the loss of his innocence, and as the books progress, you start having the adults around him start worrying about just how cold he has become, because he does become very cold. In this story, because I can't tell you anything really about it because I will spoil everything, because this whole book is based on something that will ruin book 9. Yeah, but Alex goes off on his own mission to go and solve something or find out something, and ends up getting hooked back into the spy world. But it was fun, it was enjoyable, and the beginning was the best. The beginning was the best. By the end, he does one thing that does bug me. I know he does it for suspense, where, you know, Alex has gone off and done something, and then you're over here in the, you know, scene later, and you're going, how on earth are they going to get out of this? And then it's like, oh, but when he was there, he went and did that. It's like, yeah, I didn't know that. So that kind of bugs me. But yeah, I needed something that I could relax. It worked. Anyway, that is my first half of October wrap-up. I have a very, very bad feeling that my end of October wrap-up is going to be very small with the amount of work that I've got at the moment, because we've just been told that we're getting inspected as well, and I've got to get all of that done. So yeah, no pressure at all. And of course exams have got to start, and they actually need to have questions to answer. So I've got a horrible suspicion that I'm going to not be reading much for the next 2 weeks. But then the holiday starts-ish, although the marking first, but the marking doesn't take that long, fortunately. So November will be better, although nano. But yeah, anyway, that's me for now. Oh, I suppose I should say that if I can, tomorrow I'm going to quickly read Richard II so that I can do my Shake Tube. I'm going to try. I hope I get it right. At this stage, I have a funny feeling that if I'm not setting exam papers, I might be sleeping. But I'm going to definitely give it a try. Just put up with me for this month. It's going to be the last month of insanity, and then my life will return to something resembling normality. But yeah, that's me for now. I will see you soon, hopefully. Bye.